Coleman is an astronaut, can you tell? She has all the badges and everything, which makes her absolutely official. Cady has over 180 days in space, accumulated over 2 space shuttle missions, a 6-month expedition to the International Space Station. She launched and landed aboard the Soyuz, Russian Soyuz spacecraft. She acted as the lead robotics and science officer during her tenure aboard the ISS. And you performed the 2nd ever free flyer robotic capture from the ISS. Presently, you are astronaut and innovation lead at NASA's Office of Chief Technologist.
Correct.
Are you the chief technologist, or?
I am not. I work for the chief technologist, and it's like working in sort of the Switzerland of NASA. It's this place that's I don't know. It's a magical place because it's a place where you can have big ideas that places that are more established can't really. You don't really have time within their mission to work out, and so we sort of do the trailblazing and try things out, get them proven, and then hand them off to the folks at NASA that really.
That's amazing. I wish we were having the really great camera so you could see it, but that just didn't work. When I heard I was going to get to talk to Cady, there was a bunch of things, and I'm going to try and ask them. At what age did you think about science? Never mind being an astronaut, but.
Science, I would say, was in high school, where I had a teacher. I had a very intense kind of chemistry teacher that just thought that chemistry was everything, and it should be everything to us. And so I loved it.
So a good teacher.
A really good teacher.
See, you might not have. I
didn't take no for an answer. I want you to just kind of go, really? I don't know if I understand this. And she's like, everybody needs chemistry, and it's the best in the world.
Oh, so for the teachers out there, see how your passions can really affect your students. So that's why you went into chemistry.
That's correct.
What was your original plan to go to with chemistry? You were going to MIT?
I went to MIT as an undergrad, and I have to say I actually was not planning to go to a science and engineering school, or one that was so so known for.
MIT is a big deal.
It is a big deal, and yet I said to my mom, Mom, I don't want to go to some school where it's like science and math and they're not regular people, and. It's not the first time in my life I've had to admit that I was wrong, where she told me I couldn't say no unless I went up there and I looked around. I took a tour, and it was so obvious that there were so many people there that were just like me, that were regular, normal people who loved, they loved what they had, a passion for what they did, and they wanted to, but they also liked to, go to parties and do sports. And
it was a passion. So when Mom says, just check it out, just don't say no, just give it a chance, listen to your mom, right?
Now that I have a 15-year-old, I'm going to say yes, listen to your mom.
Okay, absolutely. Mine's all grown up, and she did the same thing. Since you mentioned STEM education, there's a huge push, STEM this, science and mathematics, but some people are not inclined in that way. I mean, it just, I still use a calculator. I'm sorry, I just have to. But for those who still love the idea of space, are there also jobs in NASA for people who aren't scientists?
Absolutely. I mean, you see people walking out to a rocket, getting in the rocket and going, and there are hundreds and hundreds and really thousands of people that help make that happen. Everybody from people that are designing the spacecraft, but what about who's just organizing all that? Yeah. What about who is leading the teams? It's not always technical leadership that's needed. And what about the people who are just envisioning what you're going to do up there and the missions? When we're planning to live on Mars, we need people from all aspects of life. But I guess what I like to think about is that you might think that somebody like me, math, science, physics, all those subjects just came easily. And I will tell you that I do have a certain intuition. Math is okay for me. It's not, some people, when they read a book and a textbook and they see an equation, they go, yes, and then this happens. I go, okay, equation, now what happened? To some people, that's a sentence, but to me, it's not. And in physics, this is something is really not intuitive to me. And then look at my job. Does that mean physics isn't for me? No, it just means that I have to actually swallow my pride. I have to ask for more explanations and just say, the way you explained it didn't work for me. Could we try again? Is there somebody else?
Wow.
Go find another source. Either somebody that you find or the internet or a different place or videos. But, you know, physics and science and chemistry, I mean, all of us need to have some technical background, I think, because, you know, we want to make informed decisions about our lives, about, you know, when somebody talks about healthcare and tells me what's going on with my kid, I want to be able to really understand the choices. Right. And so we all need, even if it doesn't feel like it's you, I'm sorry, but you still have to use it. That doesn't mean using a calculator, well, that's okay.
But that's that's also taking responsibility for decisions.
It is, but I think that there's basically one of the reasons why there's sort of a dichotomy of people who think, oh yeah, I'm in the science, technology kind of camp, and oh, I'm not, is partly the way that we present these things, especially to girls and minorities, where, you know, you just show some cool widget to like a child who's a guy, and they're like, wow, want to take that apart, want to do it. Typically, girls want to know, if I knew how to fix that, what kind of difference would it make to people?
You're right.
How could I change people's lives? And so there's actually folks that changed the computer science course at Carnegie Mellon to tell these kinds of stories about why you'd want to be able to do this stuff for computer programming or electronics. And they increased the enrollment by like 40%.
Well, it's almost the difference between coming up with an answer and knowing how you got to the answer, when the teacher used to say, work out the entire equation, because you're going to learn as you work out the problem.
Exactly.
That's so cool. I never thought of applying it in that same way. All right. So before we get into your space experience, you probably had to go on the Vomit Comet, which is the KC-135, which is a plane that everybody has to go on. Can you tell people about that?
Everybody loves to go on this plane. So
I want you to know, I had the opportunity. There was not a chance I would.
Really?
I was
We're going
to
have to talk about that.
Horrified.
Well, I guess what I think, it's an airplane that is going to fly up really steeply and then down really steeply. And when you're flying down, it's as if you were like in an elevator and the cord broke and then you're falling, right? So you and the elevator both falling, but it's not that bad because it's an airplane that can then pull up. And so we get about 30 seconds of floating around. It is used mostly to help us understand how experiments are going to work, especially things like liquids in zero gravity or in microgravity behave really differently. And so we want to know, what do liquids really want to do? And we have experiments we designed for space, but we have to introduce the liquid. We have to squish it out of a needle or a straw or something. And so on that plane, we discovered at one point, when we're trying to look at what drops of liquid are going to do, well, they're wetting right back onto the needle. And so we couldn't do the experiment. So that's why we use that plane to figure that stuff out early. And 30 seconds doesn't sound like very long, but it's long enough to figure out, to be weightless maybe in a spacesuit and to figure out, can you see here and do this and see out of your helmet at that angle? Something that when I was on the ground trying something out, learning how to operate a space crane, it was easy to do. But then when you're really weightless in the spacesuit, the angle of the gloves was such that I really couldn't see above here. So I couldn't see the end of the crane that I was pointing. So 30 seconds, it's magical. I love the feeling.
Oh, just
you just have to be careful. And there's people that help you.
Now, when you see films of people who are doing it, it's always the clip of everyone smiling and going, but I would be horrified. And I'm so proud of you for being so brave.
It's really fun, but it's interesting. And also, some people don't feel well in terms of being nauseous.
Oh, yes.
And I will tell you that this is where chemistry is a great answer. Okay?
It floats.
I mean, we have anti-nausea medications that help people who have nausea problems, who are sick or maybe taking cancer drugs, things like that. I get seasick. And,
me too.
And those kinds of medications really help me for being seasick. Well, I can take them for that plane.
Really?
And actually, I certainly do take them for that plane because the experiments are really important. And I mean, it could cost gazillions of dollars.
And you want to be all there. You want to be 100% in.
Well, because the whole plane will be flying for nothing if you in that spacesuit are not feeling well. So,
what is your favorite thing about being in space?
I love the floating. I mean, and it's because it's not about just, oh, here we are floating around. When you live up there, and it's like 10 train cars put together. I mean, so it's huge without the seats in them. Right. So there's really a lot of room, and the only way to move around is to fly.
Well, I was told, and I don't, because he totally fades away now that I'm talking to you as far as my favorite astronaut.
I'm the favorite.
That's
now,
right. That's what I
okay.
said. His name totally faded away. He said it was like swimming.
When the time that I feel like I feel like, oh, I'm back there, I'm back in space, is when I was just recently in the ocean diving. And you know how like when you're in the ocean and you're diving, you're down underwater and the water goes like, you feel the waves, you feel and when you're moving with the current like that, that's when I felt just weightless.
Okay,
like
so you
I
can
was
try that
flying.
at home. Go into the surf. Go with the wade. I mean, that's a
Well, but
brilliant
that was,
analogy.
I was also scuba diving, so I was able to just really kind of like hang out there. I wasn't body surfing and being at the sort of, at the whim of the waves.
Well, funny you mentioned scuba diving because I was going to ask you, now that you've done space, I mean, you've kind of done space. Have you thought
Not
about?
done yet.
Of course not.
Never done.
But have you considered ocean exploration?
It is, exploration. It's like a spectrum. I mean, it's a spirit, and I think it's a spirit that people have. My dad actually worked in diving and salvage in the Navy. So when men, it happened to be men at the time, first lived under the sea in these habitats, he was designing those habitats. So in my family, it kind of made sense to do these things. And there are so many similarities between suits that we would use for underwater and suits that we would use for space. And when you think about it, it's just that you're wearing something and you're using tools that help you operate in an environment where you can't just take that helmet off or take those gloves off.
You're kind of limited. Now, I also heard that when you are doing the floating, you lose any calluses on your feet and you get calluses on top of your feet.
Yes.
Is this because you do monkey things with your feet?
Well, it's more like when we have all sorts of kind of like railings, we call them handrails around on the space station to grip onto and move. But when you want to stop and you want to be in one place, you just tuck your toes under one of those, and that's how you stay in one place.
Sounds perfect.
And so you do actually lose the calluses on the bottom of your feet, and then on the top you would get some calluses.
So you get a reverse pedicure.
Feet. Exactly.
I like that. Was there anything else that when you were in space, did you ever see, and you know what I'm talking about, did you ever see anything you didn't expect to see?
You have been reading on the internet.
I know, right? The internet, I mean, there are videos of this second of you going, can I say it?
Of course.
I've seen an identified flying object.
So if you had the complete sentence, and actually I think you can even see this on the
Well,
History
no, they
channel.
said it cut out because you went to the secret channel and you discussed it with them. And none of us are supposed to know. And the answer is?
And the answer is that they asked us to switch cameras, and we thought that they did, because on the ground in the simulations it'd just be like instant put up in space, and then about a minute and a half later they said, oh, we switched cameras, and meanwhile we thought they switched, and so we have that camera pointing everywhere, embarrassing that you could think of. And my partner up there, that we were on the night shift together, was just mortified, and he launched himself down the module. But this is our very first day in space, and we are not very good at it, right?
And you're not sure of your footing or...
And so he bounces off the ceiling, and I said, he said, we have an unidentified flying object, and it is not very good. And then I went back to work, and I spent, an hour putting something together, the glove box, actually. And if you see all the channels of video, it's very clear what happened.
But at what point did you find out that you started conspiracy theories?
It was really a while later. It was a while later.
Were you still up there, or had you come back down?
Oh, we'd come back home.
Oh, okay. 3D.
So I'm proud of me. I learned something. I learned probably not to make that kind of joke.
Some things aren't really funny sometimes.
Actually, well, I'm proud of making people think. It's good to make people think about what's real, what's not, and where your imagination could take you. And our imagination can take us to those places. And I'm a big science fiction fan.
So am I. Oh my.
It's this world that you thought was the future, and then so many of the things that we have right now, they're from that future.
Well, it's like when you go to Vandenberg Air Force Base and you drive around there and there's nobody there. But all of a sudden it's lunchtime and you go into a building, it's full of people. Now, those people were in different buildings. They're underground. They're everywhere. It's a lot. But I did want to tell you, because I know time is short, have you thought about the 3D printer project? And how does a 3D printer work in zero gravity?
So, first of all, I'm a sort of an absent-minded, forgetful person. That's why we have checklists, and they save me all the time.
Okay, in theory, since you know about physics,
Mhm.
how would a 3D printer work in
So
space?
the 3D printers work by depositing layer after layer after layer, right? And where you're sort of building an object from the ground up. And yet the element that isn't as obvious here on the ground is that there's one layer down, and then this other layer touches it. And as
And
soon as they
sticks to it.
touch, they're sticking.
I got it.
And so that's how you can build. But but down here, gravity actually does play a role where you're going to have things that have the stress of gravity, and just like us.
Mhm.
Gravity, makes my hair come down like this
Right.
and not big like you see it in the space pictures. I am shorter down here because of just gravity on my spine. Same thing will happen in 3D printing. And so that's why we're working with it up there to understand how does it work? What are the effects that we don't, understand, that we don't necessarily see.
Well, it'd be a
down
great
here.
way to replicate parts if you needed parts.
Well, and there's certain tools that we use all the time. And I will tell you the most important tools that you have up there are, there's a ratchet wrench. Every panel that kind of covers stuff in the space station so it's not all floating everywhere. It's got these same kind of little bolts. And you just need one kind of ratchet
Universal ratchet.
Yes, and everybody has one, and then there's a spare one for the space station. When you lose yours, then you're using the spare, and you are in dangerous territory.
Yes.
Because especially if they're for the same reasons you lost the one, you might lose the next, right? So you really have to keep track of your tools. The fact that I would have a way to save myself and print an extra one means everything to me. The other two things that you need are, you need a pair of scissors to open your food, and you need a spoon. And so when you lose your scissors, you lose your spoon, or you lose your ratchet wrench. Those are the three big deals. It's true. I mean, not dangerous trouble,
Yeah, right,
but more
right.
like
But, it's
everyday.
like, what am I going to do now?
Rats. Now I can't do that. I have to go do this. And boy, you'd better not touch somebody else's spoon.
Well, aside from being an astronaut, you did something that I admire and I just think is the coolest thing, being Capcom.
Oh, I love that job,
think that is an awesome thing. You want to tell people what being a Capcom is?
Well, you're the interface at mission control between everybody who works in mission control and the people up on the shuttle or up on the space station. And because you're, as an astronaut or a person who is trained to do this job and probably works really closely with the astronaut office, then you understand a little bit about what they're going through up on orbit. And you also understand how the machine down here, the mission control, is working. And so, it gets to be 3:30 and on the schedule up on the space station, Cady is supposed to, or let's say Scott Kelly is supposed to have started something, and everybody is waiting. They've got their things that are waiting and getting timed and all those kinds of things. Now, first of all, we would have explained to Scott, this starts exactly at 3:30 and you need to do it right then. Not everything is like that, but we actually do tell the crew when it depends on that. But so everybody's looking and we don't see any sign that Scott turned that valve, right? And the flight director will say, well, Cady, why don't you call him and remind him? So, we just saw him go around the corner into node 3, where we have all our exercise equipment and the bathroom. So I say we give him like 5 more minutes, unless, we really need to make an announcement and go find it.
And the word Capcom comes from capsule communicator from the
Correct.
Apollo and Gemini era.
Because you're the one who's communicating with the capsule.
Like,
and it's a neat place
cool
to be, really, because you feel like you accomplished 2 missions, the ground mission and the crew mission.
And you're pretty much the conduit.
Exactly.
You have to give the news.
It's true.
So tell me, why Mars? Because Mars is there, Mars is red, Mars is fabulous, but why do we want to go to Mars?
First of all, I'll say that I just don't think that we're designed as humans to stay in one place. I don't think you could keep people on this planet. They're always going to be looking outward and looking further. And Mars is a very logical destination in terms of it's really the next closest place that is the most like a place that we could really settle and be. And so then it's a question of how are we going to get there? And we call this the Journey to Mars. It's got a formal
I
name.
have a bumper sticker, so I'm there.
And the steps, the steps I will tell you are frustratingly slow. I mean, there's a reason we're not going to Mars right now, and it's because we're not ready. I mean, the water recycling equipment up on the space station, the air recycling equipment break more often than you'd want them to break if you were 6 months away without a lifeboat, right?
Yeah.
And the reason is not because they were designed poorly, but because we're operating in an environment that is very strange and puzzling, and a lot of things are different. And that's actually how we find out how things really work. You know, we're finding out what do liquids really want to do. And so that way we understand how to make recycling for, you know, up in space so that we can reuse our water. But actually, it's really important information down here on Earth as well. All the things that we need to do, not all, but many, for that journey to Mars, recycling water and air, and learning how to grow plants in a place that it's not easy to do so. Those are all actually Earth problems as well.
And the moon is, you know, we've kind of done the moon. It's no good anymore.
Well, in going to Mars, I mean, it's not. It makes sense.
Could that be an intermediary
It
spot?
absolutely could. And basically, we're smart enough about space to know that we need life support that's going to work. We need spacesuits that are going to work. We need vehicles that are going to work. It almost doesn't quite matter exactly what that destination is, but we know the most logical nexts. And we've also in the plan, we're accommodating for the fact that if we find out that, you know, we're ready to go even further than, say, the moon. But the moon is a really attractive place in terms of, basically it's 3 days away. And I mean, the space station is, you know, an hour and a half away in terms of being able to come home.
And Mars is?
And Mars is more like 6 months. And so I want to make those mistakes or learn that we need to redesign those systems, you know, right now on our test bed, which is the space station, but also then going further out into the solar system, leaving low Earth orbit. And so the big plan that is not always, I think, very clear is that NASA is taking the things that we know how to do, which is getting people and stuff up and down to a space station, in orbit around the Earth, in a place we can test technologies. We know how to do that. So we are transferring those responsibilities to our commercial partners who are, I mean, stuff up and down they're already doing tonight.
Yes.
Is a launch of
Yes.
the Orbital Sciences supply ship, the Cygnus, and bringing all sorts of supplies plus new experiments.
Well, it's so cool. It's
ISS.
almost when I was at Kennedy Space Center. Oh no, this launch pad's used by such and such, and this, and it. I found it interesting that
It's
people
a big
don't know.
space family.
There are two teams when you have a launch with a commercial package. There's your people or the Air Force, and then there's the company that sponsors what's
Mhm.
going up.
Well, there's a launch pad, you know, operating team, but even in the bigger picture, you know, we've transferred that responsibility for getting stuff up and down to places like SpaceX and Orbital Sciences. But we've also made contracts for them to build ships or capsules to go up and down with people. So this is all about the space station, right? But we were talking about the moon and Mars. And in order to go to those places, we need a different propulsion system. We need a different capsule. And that's what NASA is working on, is the Orion capsule and the Space Launch System. Big rocket to get us.
We were there for
further.
the first test.
Were you? Wasn't that
At
amazing?
Kennedy Space Center, yeah. That was amazing. How are we doing on time? 5 minutes?
So we should maybe take a
Wait,
few
I
questions.
have, because we changed the camera, I don't know where the question button went. So I'm really sorry, but I did have a question, personal.
Okay.
Watch the movie Gravity.
Okay.
All right, Sandra Bullock is being bounced around. She's being knocked around. She's on a tether. She's crashing into things. Next thing we see, she's coming out of the water half naked and stands on the sand. She has no bruises on her body whatsoever. And it was at that point the movie totally lost me, because do you not get bruises in space?
So we have to unpack that a little bit.
Okay.
And first of all, even though in that movie there are some laws of physics that are not correct.
Okay.
Okay. And I mean, just the fact that the Hubble Space Telescope, the space station, the Chinese space station, which we don't have yet, I mean, they're not all in the same place, and you can't actually use just the amount of propulsion that you've got, like in a fire extinguisher, to get there. I mean, that's not correct. But what I loved about that movie is that I think space is a magical place, and I love the fact that we are, you know, in low Earth orbit, just really 250 miles up, looking down, and you know, we're in space, and yet I don't get to bring the people that I love up there, and other people don't get to experience it. And that was a very visual movie. And I felt like they actually, first of all, they showed that we're in space, which I think that is not always well known. And second, I think they showed what that view looked like and a little bit about what it felt like to have that view. I loved the fact that the heroine was a woman. And in the beginning, you know, there's some things that maybe I would have done differently, but you know what? She wasn't a trained astronaut person in the movie, right?
Right.
And if you notice through the movie, she was just tougher and tougher. I mean, if it didn't work this way, she looked around, she found another way. And I want girls to see that. But now back to the bruising and the getting bounced around. In a big spacesuit, you know, that actually is bigger than you. And so you're probably not going to get bruises, except that where the joints are, we're always coming out of that spacesuit, you know,
Really?
pretty beat up, really. But just because it's, you know, it's a suit. And that's one of the technologies we're looking at, is how do we have a spacesuit that helps us instead of one that we are having to muscle around.
I'm telling you, bubble wrap.
We will take that into consideration. But then even, you know, in space, and I have to tell you that actually, I did get to talk to Sandra Bullock when I was.
I know you did. She
Space.
was your pen pal or your Skype pal.
Well, and it was just really neat to be able to share what that environment really was like, so that she could then share it with everybody else, and just show that we're real people up there, real people with families. And
well, I think you've proved right here that you are real people. And we have somebody here, Steve Brobeck, who is the founder, along with Jason Preston on Dent, and he's going to come here. Yes?
I'm coming around. Okay.
Yes,
actually,
you're coming.
You know, I'm gonna show the sign here. I love that we're here at the Dent conference, which is, you know, I'll let Steve explain
We're
exactly.
here in sunny Sun Valley, Idaho. I don't want to block the logo.
Well, I love these. They've got all these quotes around that I think make all of
I've
us
been taking
think.
pictures of them and making them my morning thought.
And we've been thinking about them together. And
You can scoot right into them.
and I love dangerous ideas. And we've been
Works
having
for
a
me.
lot of really great ones.
So, Steve, have you ever had a question for Cady?
Oh, all the time. And we had a little adventure
How
down in
about one
Florida.
you want to share?
Oh, tell me about. Well, I have the question about. Do you think you might be able to
can't
come
wait.
to our next event? She knows what that is. I go, I'll do a self-serving question. How about that?
So internet.
It's like, oh, I see where you're going with this. Yeah, we're hosting a new event, so I had planned on asking Cady, but not necessarily.
What kind of event is this, Steve?
I'm glad you've asked, Marcia. So our Dent conference is about making a dent in the universe. That's what it was named after, the Steve Jobs phrase. And because we've had an opportunity to work with various folks in various space-related fields, we've decided that in September, we're going to take over the Innovation Hangar in San Francisco for a couple days to host Dent Space, which will be an event significantly dedicated to commercial spaceflight.
Well, and what I love about this is that, first of all, I mean, you can't say you're going to do space and then have just NASA there anymore.
Right, exactly.
Because it's not, you know,
right?
It's about a bigger family of capabilities and of companies. But
It's
also,
ideas.
if it's about space, it's actually about Earth. And something that I'm really proud of is, I mean, it's the things that we do, like the osteoporosis research that we do, you know, could benefit millions and millions of people here on Earth. Understanding what liquids really want to do, it affects everything that involves flow through a pipe that we don't understand. And that is flow through factory pipes, it's flow through our pipes. So it's a way for us to show what the future is doing. And then it's also a way for us to show why it affects us on a more day-to-day basis. And I think we're looking forward to helping you guys show off.
Well, we'd love to have that help.
And we'll do this again, and
Okay.
we'll have the right camera working and everything.
Okay,
We had to
sounds
spin
great.
us around at the last second.
this
So
works
where's
great.
it going
And
to
we're all
be?
about Plan B.
Right,
You know?
you have
And
to.
we were great with Plan B.
The Innovation Hangar is the Palace of Fine Arts in San Francisco, and the rest of the details, it's in September. I think it's the 21st and 22nd we've reserved, but all those details can be found at dentthefuture.com.
dentthefuture.com, and we will be tagging this video, so you'll be able to go there and find how you can meet. The great thing about the Dent conferences, and I just wanted to say this, is that you're here and nobody's pitching you. Everybody is here to share ideas and talk to people. I'm sure, you know, people.
It's astoundingly
Isn't it?
cooperative. And, you know, and I mean, I came really for help, you know, and I'll pitch actually something that we are doing in 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, sorry, on April 23rd and 24th is the Space Apps Challenge. This is where NASA puts out, like last year, it was 35 challenges, 35 things that we need help with, that we can't do by ourselves. It actually doesn't make sense to do by ourselves. And it's actually sort of a a strategy to get people to realize that they could be part of solving NASA problems. And we are actually, as NASA, a leader in crowdsourcing for solutions to problems, for even analyzing data. And so, you know, I think it's going to be a really amazing weekend. Last year, when they did this Space Apps Challenge, there were 160 cities in 60 different countries. I don't know, 8,000 or 10,000 people around the country working on these 35 challenges, and the people that came up with ideas, I mean, it is not who you think.
And what is the website
And that's
that
why we
people can
want
look
them to
that
come.
up?
I would go to Space Apps on Twitter.
At Space Apps
And
on
the
Twitter.
NASA International Space Apps Challenge. And you'll see the sort of projects that you could be working on. You don't have to wait until April 23rd to start, but it's a weekend where they've established sites all around the world. People come together, and it's very inclusive. And it's very inclusive of especially women and minorities, where there is somebody at each one of those sites that really cares that when somebody walks in that hackathon, that they find a team to be a part of.
See? So this is an opportunity for anybody who loves space. You have a passion, and it's your opportunity to get started.
Maybe we can show off some of the solutions.
Yeah.
in
Yeah,
San
I
Francisco
hope
in
so.
September.
That's
I
right.
sure
We
hope
can
so.
Seriously, that'll be a great thing to
But you know,
show.
crowdsourcing doesn't always work very well. The British government crowdsourced the name of a new ship. And 70% of the people on the internet voted to name it Boaty McBoatface. Right?
Wait,
Well-
we don't like that?
So what we've learned at NASA
What?
is you have to be careful what choices you offer. But you know, seriously, if you want to be able to make some decisions based on the data, you have to get people to, you know, give people choices that help you make those decisions.
I think Floaty would be a name for a good something instead.
I'm going to abstain.
Floaty.
So I want to say goodbye from Dent, and thank you for joining us, Cady Coleman. Say goodbye,
Bye.
Steve.
Thanks.
And we'll see you in September
Marcia.
at Dent Space.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.